as the terror of the situation. And one part of the terror of the situation is that the world is full of sleeping human beings that are marching like lemmings off the end of the cliff. And so we see all of these destructive societal patterns of things that aren't going to lead to a good outcome, and that we need to wake up.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to Engaging the Phenomenon. And today I wanted to discuss here this idea and this theme of the terror of the situation and in regards to that disclosure. So, really, disclosure being the terror of the situation and actually the lack thereof. Because, this interview that I grabbed a clip from here is from Dr. Robert Gilbert on the Know Thyself podcast, which has some pretty good interviews, especially if you're interested in consciousness and the like, is talking about a philosopher, Gurdjieff, who talks about the terror of the situation. And I love this analogy in regards to disclosure, because the part of the terror of the situation is discussing the idea that the collective consciousness or consensus reality, our society hasn't fully taken in the UFO reality at face value, right? For many people, it's just an idea. It's become a lot less stigmatized in the last few years, and it's finally becoming a mainstream topic. Little by little, we still have a long ways to go, and it is a long process. And things like the UAP Disclosure Act are helping to move that forward. Lou Elizondo's book Imminent, and people like David Grush, the UAP hearings we had in 2023, and many other contributors, right? There's many milestones that we've passed in the last few years that have taken us to uncharted territories in regards to disclosure and UAP transparency. But the idea here being the terror of the situation, that if the collective society hasn't taken it on as a reality, we're not correctly addressing the issues and the matters at hand, right? And I'm generally an optimist, and I believe that if the entire world or society were to take the UFO reality as a reality at face value and began addressing it, we would make a lot of progress fast. Of course, there's still going to be elements that are classified in regards to technology, right? But even just the general idea that we are not alone, right? There's other right, non-human intelligence that is among us, has been for millennia, right? Maybe since the beginning of human society, as far as we know. It's apparent throughout history, and basically every religion discussing humans interacting with non-human intelligence, right? So, regardless of our awareness of it, it's already here, right? It's here. So why not deal with it? Why not address it? And part of the idea in this little discussion that between Dr. Robert Gilbert uh, is saying that there's destructive societal patterns because of this terror of the situation, because we are unaware. And again, I'm using this analogy in the framework of disclosure and the UFO reality, and in a bigger context, also the nature of reality itself, because I think that the UFO reality is going to take us a step further in understanding the nature of reality, including in a very scientific way, right? And other ways, right? Dr. Jeffrey Kripal talks about it in the way of humanities and other aspects, which are equally as important. And, because you have the science aspect, but there's also the human potential and self-discovery aspect of who we are, right? The more we discover in the outer, in the world out there, so to speak, the more we learn about ourselves and as human beings and the self, right? the outer and the inner worlds, as above, so below, and what have you. So I think that again, these destructive societal patterns are in part taking place because we're unaware, right? We're ignorant to them. We're in the dark. The light hasn't been shed on these realities, and we haven't then addressed them. And if we were collectively aware of the UFO reality and other things, we could directly address them and work together on them. There's more academics coming on board, even politicians, which is something of a miracle that we have bipartisan support on the UAP Disclosure Act and these other efforts and protecting whistleblowers and trying to get at least the basics of the UAP reality out there. So I think that one of these destructive societal patterns that's being talked about as in the analogy of disclosure is the cover up, right? It's held us back. The cover up, the secrecy is in this case self-destructive because it's completely undermined our democratic process, right? Now people argue whether legally or illegally, and then Jim Semivan in one of our last interviews discussed the legality of that in regards to the executive orders and whatnot, which is very important. And I hope people listen to that because Jim knows what he's talking about in regards to that, and especially when it comes to the subject. If you can take a hint, he'd be a guy who would be well informed on that for whatever reason. So again, we find ourselves in this terror of the situation, and also are in the talk with Jim and Jim Semivan and Peter Levenda was this idea of the UFO reality being indigestible, which I don't believe is the case. Maybe decades ago that would have been more of a relevant kind of topic and excuse, especially if the people trying to manage the UFO reality, the managing magic, not that they can manage it, but work perception management on the public's perception of it. I think nowadays we are a lot more prepared for it. I think we are ready for it, and I think really, quite frankly, we don't have any more time to lose. Uh, the world is crazy as it is right now. What do we have to lose, right? And I think it's a catch-22 in the sense where we're never going to be ready for it, right? We're never going to be ready to deal with it until we do, right? I think we have to take that leap of faith, so to speak, and just let the people handle it, because that's what we do as humans. We adapt. That's what we've always done. We're still here to this day by some miracle, even after the development of nuclear weapons and constant wars and cold wars and what have you. I think we can handle this, and I think we need to. I think we need to handle it, and I think we need to address it. There's so many different elements, collectively and individually, that need to be faced and met, and those challenges need to be overcome. There's so much more I can get into that, but that's a whole kind of. I'm going to get into a lot of tangent rants on that. So, again, just in this idea of the terror of the situation, and committing to truth, right? And in this regard, to transparency of the UFO reality, I think it's necessary at this time. And, I think it's going to help us in a lot of ways, right? What better way to unite at least the United States, right? If not the world, right? Potentially by disclosing the fact that we're not alone, right? I think people will realize that we are more like as humans, and that we have a collective interest to unite, because there's this other intelligence out there, and like they're certainly more advanced, and they're watching us. So we better get our act together, right? But there's also the hopeful sense that if they somehow made it and they're so advanced, seemingly, why can't we do that too? Right? There's no reason that we can't. So again, I'm optimistic. I don't think that we're gonna have disclosure and there's gonna instantly be a utopian world, or that we're going to shift into a 5D reality, or what have you, even though I think all reality is wrapped in right here, right now, all at the same time. But I think just in accepting and facing these realities, we're going to rise to the challenge and we're going to grow, right? In I don't see it any other way. Maybe I'm naive and or something, or just too optimistic, but I don't see any scenario where we disclose this reality to the world of non-human intelligence and everything just falls apart. I don't see that. I see people being like, yeah, we knew that, right? And being maybe a little pissed that they've been lied to for so many years, but I, we'll get over it, right? And I think the idea of a non-human intelligence that's like super advanced, that has this technology that we uh, have recovered, right, and have we've been working on, and that we may ourselves as humans have the potential to recreate, um, or if not completely recreate, mimic some of the technology, right? It's hopeful that, like, wow, we have the ability to go way far beyond technologically and otherwise, right? And again, I just see that the disclosure and UAP transparency as a gigantic opportunity for us. I don't see it any other way, really. Um, and the thing is, it's here, right? So whatever you believe that the agenda of non-human intelligence is, um, that if if we were to disclose that we're somehow inviting them into our world, or how are they going to react? Well, if that's the case, let's get to it then. Let's just get it over with. Uh, because I don't see the reason for all this, like kicking it down the road and just waiting any longer. I think we've waited long enough, and whatever the situation is, that we're going to deal with it. And again, it's the idea that we can manage the UFO reality, right? Like the people that are gatekeepers and who are withholding the information and the reality of this from the world. The UFO phenomenon, although it's been elusive, can disclose that at any time. And you know, if you don't get ahead of it, it's just going to be worse, right? So it's inevitable now that it's coming out, right? Like, the writing's on the wall. So let's just get to it already, right? I still see the wisdom in gradually disclosing, right? I don't think, like, just, hey, throw everything down tomorrow. Um, and I know some people may disagree with that to some extent, and I don't think it should be drawn out too long, right? But maybe we're already in the process of all that occurring. So, again, what do I know? But I think it's time, and I'm optimistic. But again, I just wanted to make this video because I really appreciated the perspective here. Um, and there's also the aspect that Dr. Robert Gilbert was talking about here in our own kind of self-transparency, right? And my take on this in regards to disclosure, and even the UFO situation, the UFO reality, and the nature of reality itself is, if you think you know it all in regards to UFOs or the nature of reality, and you think you got the whole puzzle and you have it all solved, um, you got to work on that too, because that's certainly not the case, because none of us do. And I see that as something that's inspiring, right? To something that we can work on every day, individually and collectively. Um, to work to be better, to rise to this occasion, to rise to this reality, and into ourselves as human beings, right? What does all this say about ourselves, and our own potential, right? again, individually and collectively. Again, so this is just my kind of rant on this idea of the terror of the situation. I just really enjoyed the dialogue, which I'll link to in the description. Uh, but this kind of perspective on how the terror of the situation relates to disclosure uh, of the UFO reality on a collective level, individually. And I think we need to rise to the occasion and use this as an opportunity. So thank you for tuning into this rant, guys. I'll be seeing you soon with some interviews. Take care.
And so, this whole question about sincerity on the spiritual path is a type of recommitment to ourselves and our own true nature, and to, as much as possible, living in truth with the people around us. Now, this also can lead to the types of experiences that the great Russian philosopher Gurdjieff would refer to in different ways as the terror of the situation. And one part of the terror of the situation is that the world is full of sleeping human beings that are marching like lemmings off the end of the cliff. And so we see all of these destructive societal patterns of things that aren't going to lead to a good outcome, and that we need to wake up. But another aspect of the terror of the situation is to what degree we personally are still asleep, still need to wake up in the greater metaphysical sense, and that we need to continue to recommit to truth. Now, that may mean some fundamental and sometimes very difficult changes in our relationships with other people, in what we do for our living and for our income, all kinds of things related to how we live our life to get more aligned with truth. Because we all grow up in situations with the family and societal expectations, and how do we craft that to move in the direction we need to move to? So I think that's some of the first things that we need to be aware of as far as sincerity on the spiritual path. This does link to that fundamental opening of the heart we talked about before. And when we look at those 6 essential exercises, then things such as the observation and direction of thinking and feeling and willing and positivity and openness to new perspectives is all a part of staying in sincerity, staying in truth, because it's very easy to pop out of it. It's quite common to find people who started on the spiritual path, they become known publicly. And of course, one of the issues that we discussed last time is one of the first trials on the spiritual path is the one of ego inflation. As soon as we begin to ego inflate and think we're more advanced and perfect than we are, we're already moving out of truth. So any type of arrogance or hubris in that level, all these things are interconnected, is going to take us out of the correct resonance and alignment with the beings we really want to be connected to. Now, this is one aspect of what I believe we touched on briefly last time, again with the work of Gurdjieff, where he says we often start on the spiritual path toward a very specific destination where we want to get to. And then in dealing with all of the sufferings and strivings in the world, we can start having a curling back on itself of our spiritual development in a way that we don't even know is happening. But just trying to deal with all the things we have to navigate in the world, it starts curling back, and it can actually end up going backwards, and we don't even know what's happened. That's where he talks about the need for corrective shocks, and that corrective shocks will come in at certain parts of the spiritual path to keep us honest, to keep us clear, sometimes giving us very difficult life experiences for us to recommit to the main purpose. Because, as I always like to say, life is a limited time opportunity, and we need to use the time as effectively as possible.
There's something out there that's watching us. There's something out there that knows what we're doing, that thinks our technology is a toy, right? That they can play with. That's indigestible. That means your whole reason for living, your whole reason for being, the whole purpose of government and of a defense position is out the window. You don't know how to deal with this. And so you stop. You can't digest it, and therefore you stop. And when you can't digest something, you become kind of sick, right? You become this part of you that's off kilter. You can't really function that well because of this indigestible lump that you're carrying around. I don't think it is indigestible. I think they're just not asking the right questions of the right people. I think they're not open-minded enough. They can't be. In the way they've been structured, it's guns, you know, maybe psychological warfare to an extent, non-lethal warfare, which was like a John Alexander thing, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And let's face it, a Michael Aquino thing also. I mean, this idea that we're going to use non-lethal warfare, right? Which is basically psychological warfare writ
Yeah.
large. So that's what's being played on us, perhaps, right? And we're going along with it.
But
And so
played on us by the phenomenon?
by the phenomenon. So we're not going to go, and we can't disclose because the phenomenon is saying, I'm watching you, you bastards. You better not disclose, right? So you're doing everything, you're tap dancing as fast as you can. And now everybody around you is talking disclosure. Everybody around you is talking about UFOs and UAPs and all the rest of it. And there's, Dave Rush, and there's Arrow, and there's Sean Kirkpatrick doing his thing. And everybody's tap dancing around this. And there's Congress. Some of them are saying it's demons, don't even talk about it. Others are saying it's a national security situation. How come we're not addressing this? Everybody's going crazy. And there's somebody in government going, this is indigestible. We cannot talk about this. If we talk about it too much, they're going to come and deal with us in some way.